Welcome to episode 217 of the Microsoft Cloud IT Pro podcast, recorded live on February 12th, 2021. This is a show about Microsoft 365 and Azure from the perspective of IT pros and end users, where we discuss a topic or recent news and how it relates to you. In this episode, there's a new Azure region in town. We discuss some of the new regions that are coming online and how to think about deploying services to new regions, as well as the availability of availability zones in South Central US. Finally, we dive into some of the improvements around backup and restore and the recovery of files in Azure Files.
Take two. Yeah.
Take two. I just had issues as we're recording. I got an email from a CSP about an Azure subscription that I had to fix, so we started to go into all the details, decided not to, and now we're taking take two.
Take a sip of coffee. It's okay. We're in Friday, like it is in fact Friday. Monday's a holiday. You got the 3-day weekend.
We do have a 3-day weekend?
Yes.
Which holiday is it?
In the United States, it is President's Day.
Oh. I don't get that day off.
You work for yourself. You should talk to your boss.
I should. Well, my boss said my clients have a bunch of work that need to get done, so I can't take the day off. Maybe I should talk to my clients.
Yeah. Well, your clients aren't going to be around to talk to on Monday, so it's not going to matter too much.
That means I can actually get stuff done.
There you go.
So here we are, another Friday. I'm trying a different mic, Scott. Did we talk about this? I think we talked about getting some shotgun mics.
Yeah.
I am trying my shotgun mic. So everybody will have to let me know if they like this audio or the other audio. You're still using yours. You need to get some mounts and stuff. But now I have the mic like up to the right about maybe 2.5, 3 feet away instead of right here. So if you're watching this on YouTube, it looks a lot better because I don't have a big old mic sitting right in front of my face. But I don't know if the audio quality is going to be or background noise from the kids because it's also picking up some additional background noise and stuff more so than before.
We've made you more conversational versus NPR voice, but we'll see how it goes for you.
Yes. Let me know if you like my conversational voice or my NPR voice. Or you don't even care and you didn't even notice until I said something.
Yeah. Are you even listening right now? Yeah. Got it.
Yeah, pretty much. So, I have not slept this week, and my calendar keeps sending me news alerts. Or my Outlook keeps sending me alerts. Outlook does not obey the audio settings set on my Mac.
You mean to tell me that there are Microsoft applications that don't respect like native OS settings? That's crazy to me.
Yeah, so my Mac is set to send audio through my headphones. It comes through my MacBook Pro speakers. Doesn't matter what I do. Any Outlook notification noise always comes through the MacBook Pro speakers, no matter what audio output I have selected.
You know, it's a feature. I was walking someone through earlier this week Teams notifications. So if you're on Windows and you want to shut off all your notifications for Teams, you keep seeing the little pop-ups in the corner. You might think that by default, those are Windows notifications, when in fact, they're not. They're actually like Teams notifications that are part of the Electron app. So, trying to explain that a Windows application that you've installed, this thing called Microsoft Teams, doesn't in fact use native Windows notifications by default, was an interesting thing because, hopped on a screen share and sent all the screenshots and, oh, look here, I've turned all my notifications off. Oh, that looks distinctly like Windows settings notifications. That does not, in fact, look like Teams notification settings, which would be set within the Teams client itself. But thankfully, this is all fixable. At least I believe it's still in the insider builds of Teams. But you can, if you are on Windows, you can actually select the notification system. So you can say you want to use Teams notifications, which means you're using the native Electron app, or you're using Windows notifications. And if you switch to Windows notifications, then Teams will respect your Windows notification settings, specifically things like do not disturb or focus assist and all that when you turn that on and off. Um, so I've switched over to that new method of, at least on all my Windows clients, flipping over to Windows native notifications. So yeah, I can just click focus assist and go into D&D, and then know that I will not be getting any pop-ups for chats or things like that, like while I'm in the middle of a meeting doing a screen share.
Yes, and it's coming for the Mac. I do not have it in my Teams builds yet on the Mac, but I do know they're also making that switch for Mac.
Yeah.
Um, which
And
is funny.
if
Have
you're on
you ever?
Windows, like you can do it today, there is a better way to live your life if you know
Yeah.
if you know how to install the insider versions of Teams.
Which it's kind of funny. Have you ever gone into Teams on your Mac and then clicked on the window at the top to switch between windows? Like if you are trying to find a meeting or a popped out chat or something?
So I would love to go into Teams on my Mac, but I still cannot launch it for
You
whatever
still
reason. So
got it.
so I'm waiting for a new build to come out that hopefully just like even if I've nuked the cache, I've uninstalled it, reinstalled it, like
And it's
whatever's going on
still.
with my account in the current version, like yeah, it just doesn't play nice. So that's what Windows VMs are for, right? Just so you can run Teams.
Yes. So,
Because
but if
nobody's doing the web app.
yeah, but if you go look at the windows on a Mac, you actually have a Microsoft Teams notification window. It's like this hidden window that they must be using for those notifications. So I always have two windows open for Teams. I have my normal Teams app, and then I always have a Microsoft Teams notification window. Bizarre things that are done.
Yeah.
But on to some actual stuff for today. There's been a bunch of Azure news recently.
A little bit. Yeah. Yeah. If you keep up with those kinds of things.
We do. Which one? I said, what do you want to talk about today? And you just started spouting off a whole bunch of stuff. So, which one would you like to start with?
I think one of the more exciting ones, and I always like seeing Azure kind of grow into new places. So you know, we often talk about how there's this wide global footprint. You know, you've got 60 plus regions. There's the public cloud. There's all the GCC stuff, that the government community clouds or sovereign clouds that exist around the world. Like and all those different regions, like there's a whole bunch of them, but there's always more coming,
Yep.
and there's a few more, and specifically one that was announced yesterday, I believe. I don't even know what day of the week is.
I
It's the 12th. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know either. It was
Yes,
in the last couple
yesterday.
days.
Yesterday. There is a new region that's going to be launching on the east coast of the United States, which is actually going to be quite a bit closer to us. It's going to be near Atlanta. So think like Fulton and Douglas counties in Georgia. If you're familiar, or you know, you'd like a region, an Azure region, to be closer to you for whatever reason, latency, like who knows. But yeah, that's going to be launching. It's going to be US East 3, which is coming up. This was part of a wider set of announcements of investments in Atlanta. Overall, like Microsoft has been doing a lot there to build out new offices. They've been doing a ton of hiring. There's several like service engineering teams that are dedicated and housed out of those campuses, and those locations that are in Atlanta. And that's going to certainly continue to grow over time. But yeah, US East 3 is coming. This kind of piggybacks on earlier announcements, particularly in the United States. There is also going to be a West US 3. Like if you weren't keeping up with news in December, I think it was December, maybe November, whatever, last year, late last year, that Microsoft also announced that West US 3 was coming, and that's going to be in Arizona.
Nice. So at what point in time are they going to switch these to like Southeast US and Northeast US? Or are we just going to keep adding additional Easts?
You will just keep adding additional east
Additional East up
because
and down the coast?
there already is like they're like when you think about the whole north south thing,
Yep.
there's north central, there's U.S. central, there's U.S. south central, U.S. west, west two, there's U.S. East two, and now U.S. East three, and then West U.S. three. Yeah,
See, so
like
that's just it. Why does Central get North, Central, and South, and we just get 1, 2, and 3?
Mm. Well, because it wasn't, they didn't want to say like, they, they didn't want to say US East Ashburn US East Washington or US East Richmond,
But
things
couldn't
like
we
that.
get US East North, US East South, and US East
No,
Central?
like you could do like U.S. Northeast, but there is nothing in the Northeast of the U.S. Today, right? The furthest region north on the East Coast would
Is
be that stuff near Washington D.C.
yeah.
In Northern Virginia. Yeah,
Anyways, questions we ask that really have no purpose whatsoever other than
those are questions you ask that have no work purpose whatsoever. Let's just be clear there.
okay, questions I ask. The things that keep me awake at night is why is Central different than East and West? But no, that will be
I think you're thinking too hard about it.
all right. So note to self: stop thinking so hard. Uh yeah, maybe I'll have to move myself stuff to Georgia. Although to
Uh,
be fair, I've
y-
never been a big fan of Georgia,
Well, yeah,
but that's a whole
but
other
but you're
conversation.
allowed to host your stuff there.
But I can still
Uh,
put my stuff in it. Yeah.
yeah, I like I said, certainly if you have like needs for uh, having things closer to you for whatever reason that
Yep.
might be, it might be to make you feel good. It could be for actual physical things like latency or something else along the way. Like if you're in like an Equinix colo someplace in Atlanta and you want like your lowest latency over like an express route connection to Azure, uh, you know, US East 3 might be a great place for you to land at the end of the day. Um,
So I have a question because I've never actually looked at this. When they bring these online, do they publish like right off the bat? These are the services that are going to come online when East 3 comes online? Because they obviously don't always have feature parity between East 1, 2, and 3.
Right. So the way to think about that is you are correct that not all Azure services are available in all regions. So what you should do is go to the service availability documentation, which is just on the public Azure website. I'll put a link in the show notes for it, but that will tell you which services are available in a given region. This, I believe, was specifically announced as a hub region, kind of not like one of like the bigger like hero regions. Like you hear about sometimes places where experimentation occurs. Like think about, hey, we're going to do a data center in the ocean, and that was by Dublin.
Yep.
There's like all sorts of space there, right? Like North Europe is a massive footprint. Things like US East have that big footprint, right? Those are kind of the hero regions, and then there's all these hubs and spokes and things like that.
Got it.
And yeah, eventually over time, given customer demand, like if you are not seeing a service in a given place, if enough customers ask for it or a big enough customer comes along that says, hey, I really need to have service A, B, or C here for me to do business with you, Microsoft. Quite often you see things maybe pop up that way too.
Got it. Which makes sense if enough demand will put something there, but always a fun challenge too when you're spinning stuff up is to make sure everything you need is in the region you're putting it in.
Yeah.
Or something you might need. Because I've run into that once. I can't remember what it was. I think I put something in West, and we got like halfway through and we're like, oh, this actually has to be in the same region with these other services. And it was either, okay, now we can move them over to West 2. I think it might have been something to do with VPN.
Yeah, so you do have to plan for those things. Like I know in storage, one that comes up for us, and I run into it a bit in conversations, is things like availability of ZRS, like zone redundant storage. Well, we need to be in a region that has availability zones to make that happen.
Yep.
And if you are not in one of those regions, then like, ZRS is pretty hard to do, right? Like zones aren't there. The other one is archive. So archive storage is not available everywhere. Things like that. And you do run into that across every service. I think probably one that everybody would maybe be familiar with is something like compute. So you want a certain VM series or a VM size, things like that. Maybe you're looking for a particular like CPU architecture. Like, hey, I know that Microsoft hosts the like some of like the LS series. I think like the LS versus like the LS V2s. Some
Yep.
are Intel, some are AMD. Some of the LSs are in some places. The V2s, the LS V2s are only in others. So you do have to kind of take a look and plan for some of that up front. Like there is a reason that we spend a lot of time with folks and we say like, hey, get educated about the cloud, right? Like don't just stop at the AZ900, but go and read further about some of this stuff, and really do have a plan or be willing to be flexible in your plans. Like at some point in your cloud journey, you might have gone down that path of saying, well, I picked this region because it was the cheapest thing, it was closest to me, whatever reason it was, right? It was the default in the portal when you click create the very first time. You might have to move that stuff at some point to get to the place that you actually want to be.
Yep. Just like all things, there's some planning that you should probably do up front when you're going to go spin up Azure services and think about what you might need in the future and how you want to grow and expand and all of that, because it may have an impact on what region you want to go into.
Yes, plan the work, work the plan, all that good stuff.
Yes.
Uh,
So,
so
oh, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say this probably leads naturally into some of the announcements that have also come out around availability zones. And, as new regions come online, there are also improvements over time that are made to existing regions. So last week, we talked about, I believe it was last week,
It was last week about Azure AD Premium, right?
yeah, well, we talked about
Nines.
specifically SLA improvements to Azure AD, and how does that work, or how does that happen? I think one of the things you have to keep in the back of your head about Azure services is Azure is also hosted in Azure, right? So when you talk about things like maybe Azure Web Apps, or maybe you do like NoSQL DBs with Cosmos, you do Azure AD, things like that. Like they all
Yep.
require compute, right? Like there are
Right.
servers that are
End of the
running that
day,
stuff at the end
Azure's
of
just a whole bunch of servers running all these various
yeah.
Azure services.
It is a big hypervisor with a bunch of scale out storage behind it. Yes. Um, but being that all these things are hosted in Azure themselves, often service availability of Azure services can be bound to the SLAs of the regions that things are available in. So specifically something like Azure AD, a couple of years ago, there was a big outage in Azure AD, and it was caused when South Central US went down. And South Central, for a long, long time, has been an Azure region that does not support availability zones. So you don't have that ability to say, VM1 goes into zone one, VM2 goes into zone two, VM3 goes into zone three, and be
Yep.
able to spread your load and have that better SLA, specifically from an Azure SLA perspective, that comes from having something like virtual machines that are leveraging availability zones versus something like availability sets where you're in a single region and effectively a single zone or a single DC within that region. So in South Central, the region again has like received not only service improvements over time, but also physical improvements. And one of those is out and about now, and it is availability zones in South Central US, which is awesome to see. So now, if you are hosting services out of South Central, you can go ahead and start to leverage things like availability zones if you do want to have that better uptime and availability there. That also means that services that leverage availability zones, so things again like storage with ZRS, maybe it's an Azure SQL database, Cosmos DB, like all these services that have built-in replication and redundancy models, those are all going to be available to customers as well, which is always a good thing. Good thing to have. So I recommend that everybody else, like in on top, in the same vein as uh, products by region and thinking about kind of service availability by region, also understanding like Microsoft's roadmap sometimes for things like availability zones. So if you go into the Azure region documentation, like literally the public marketing website for it, I'll put a link just to the Azure region stuff. If you just flip through the list, it'll actually say like region by region if it has availability zones, if it doesn't have availability zones, or if we've publicly announced that availability zones are on our roadmap for a given region. It's just going to say coming soon. So you would actually know that, hey, this stuff is on its way.
I feel like availability zones are something you'd want to put in every region as soon as possible,
Sure.
especially given that other services sit on top of Azure. I don't just
Yeah,
my knee jerk reaction is why don't all data centers just have availability zones
I
right off the
think
bat? And I get some
I,
of it's infrastructure, right? It's there's a lot more engineering in the background that goes into availability zones than just let's spin up that service.
So if you think about availability zones, right, at the end of the day, you're talking about different pieces of physical infrastructure uh, that are physically close enough together that they meet the needs for things like network latency, right? Say
Yeah,
you're doing like ZRS storage, you need to have that available. You need to meet those kind of service level objectives and meet those customer SLAs. If you're running VMs, you want to be able to talk to each other fast enough. But you also have a service that you offer to customers, like they pay for availability zones. And that also means making sure that you're on things like separate power. Certainly, you've got like the trunks and everything that you need for networking set up. Like there's a lot that goes into that. So that means you need to have the physical space to make all that happen. So quite often, if you look at the places that availability zones are available, those tend to be places where like the provider and AWS and Google have the same thing going on. Like
right.
they've been able to buy large tracts of land where they can physically build these things out and have them ready to go, right? And in some other cases, like if you're in a space constrained area, like you haven't been able to buy acres and acres of land and do all the build outs, get all the approvals, things like that. um, you just can't do it, right?
Yeah,
There's no room there. And that's how you end up with this kind of hub spoke model where you end up with like these larger footprint regions, like something like North Europe. Like Dublin is massive, right? Lots of space, you can build new stuff out there. Like it's nice and easy to go. It's like a great hero story. And then you've got smaller hubs that are around it, which are maybe more constrained by space, regulatory environment, like whatever it happens to be, where you potentially can't, you just physically can't do those things.
yeah, because they're not. I mean, these data centers are not just a building; these are massive footprints. There was a video I saw the other day. I can't remember who put it out there, CNET or somebody, And it was Brad, I think it was Brad Smith, giving a full tour of a Microsoft data center. It was not a full tour. It was a horrible video, but it was totally a clickbait video, and I can show you the link if anybody actually wants to go see it.
I'll put a link to
Okay, but
a YouTube video.
truth
It's
be
like four
told,
minutes.
yes, you probably don't need to watch 4 minutes, but it does give you like some aerial shots, and you get at least a little bit of a sense of how big some of these data centers are.
Yeah. So, some regions are massive. Some are like big, right? They got a lot of compute in them, but they're not as massive as other places. So it is one of those consideration things too, right? Like back to the whole services services available by region thing. Like it might not just be availability zones for you. Like when you think about having access to new services in the future, like quite often it's easier to deploy those services into places like those hubs rather than the spokes, because they do have more compute and things like that available to them.
Yep, very cool. So another announcement that came out recently that I am actually using with one of my clients. It's in Azure Storage, but it's one you don't pay much attention to because it's in Azure File Shares. There have been some backup and restore functionality that have recently come to Azure File Shares where now you can actually do backups. There's a checkbox that essentially says go back up my Azure files, as well as soft delete is available in Azure File Shares. So if you're using these Azure File Shares for some map network storage within Azure, for whatever else you may use Azure File Shares for, there is some of the additional functionality that's available now to help protect files in Azure File Shares. And I saw some blog posts on it, but I also have a client that's using Azure File Shares, and in the recommendations, it recently popped up of, hey, go turn on soft delete, go turn on uh, Azure File Shares backup, because if you do have some of these older ones, it's not necessarily on by default, and it literally is like just a couple clicks, a couple checkboxes, easy to enable. I think I saw at least the soft default is now enabled, or soft delete is now enabled by default in any new Azure File Shares that you stand up.
Yes. So specifically for Azure Files, if you do create a new share, soft delete is enabled for 7 days by default. Just so you are kind of in a better place from the start, right? Like I think this is one of those things like you might not know every feature that exists out there, and
Yep.
if you didn't know soft delete was a thing but it was important to you, or you actually did need that data in there, it is a good logical default to have in place, because if you delete your data and you don't have these features enabled, there really is no guarantee around recovery, right? I think there's a lot of terminology that's thrown out there about that, like what happens when I delete my virtual machine hard disk, or I delete some of my blobs or my files, like whatever it is. Like, what does recovery look like? Sometimes you'll hear terminology like best effort, like what can you make happen? Another way to think about it is what's commercially reasonable there,
Yep.
right? Like for recovery to occur on a service that doesn't have built-in native recovery, or you haven't enabled the native recovery feature, commercially reasonable usually means that somebody needs to be dedicated to the recovery of your data. And for better or worse, people's time costs money, right? So commercially reasonable can be a better way to think about things, right? Like if you hosted an on-prem file share and somebody deleted a bunch of data out of that, how much time would you spend on recovery for it? You probably wouldn't spend a whole lot, because time is money and it's going to take you a bunch of time to do that recovery. And
Yep.
Microsoft, like as a service provider, is in very much the same type of place. So what's happening is you're seeing a lot of you're seeing a lot of these native recovery features come directly into the products themselves. So like Files, hey, it has soft delete. You might not want to pay for soft delete, but if you delete your data, it might actually be important to you, right? So the
Right.
incentive to turn it on by default isn't necessarily to make people pay more money. It's to put you in a better place for yourself, and then you're going to have to go through that decision. Do you want to turn off this native protection feature that was there? And then it's a different conversation when you say, "Oh, I deleted all my stuff." Well, hold on, you turned it off. You turned it off. I'm not the one who turned it off, right?
Right.
Like we had it on for a reason. And soft delete's all over, available in a bunch of different places through the storage footprint. Like it's not just file shares. There is soft delete for blobs, which is out there today, like individual blobs. Soft delete for containers is in preview. And has been in preview for a bit now. So you know these features exist across the storage footprint, and they're totally there for a reason, and
Yep.
that reason is not to make people pay more money.
Right. Well, and it's not even just Azure. Like now you have the recyclement in SharePoint. You have soft deleting of sites and of teams and of users, and uh, I mean, to me, same thing. All this data's valuable. Soft delete is usually relatively inexpensive or included. Like there's no, my opinion, there's no reason to turn it off because, like you said, you don't have it on. You delete your data. Anybody's going to tell you, well, why'd you delete it if you don't have backups? Think back to your on-prem example.
Yes.
If you're not buying tape backups or not investing in any backup solution on-prem and users delete files, well, it's kind of your own fault. You didn't want to pay for any backup solutions. You didn't want to pay for that stuff on-prem. And now when files get deleted, they're gone. It's There's no different. If your data is valuable, if it's that important that you were paying for backups to back it up on-prem, you should probably pay for backups to back it up in Azure. There's redundancy. Microsoft tells all the stuff to help with DR, but they are not going to help with your own stupidity.
Yeah.
To put it bluntly.
that yeah, you said it, not me.
I can say it. I don't work for Microsoft, so I can say it, right?
Yeah, no, it's an awkward conversation to have, right? When you've recovered your data, when you've deleted your data by accident, and you're trying to get it back, and it's a no-win for everybody, right? Even if you were like, if you delete your data, your file share, and you come and you open a support ticket and you say, "Oh, I deleted it by accident. I really need it back." Even if everything is able to be brought back for you, you're still down for that period of time while it's gone. And you know that can be a long, drawn out process. You still have to verify all the data after it's restored. Like there's a lot that goes into that process on kind of both sides. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Just the features are there natively. Turn them on, use them. Like they're there for they're there for a reason, right? And I think the other thing too is potentially think about like where backups make sense based on your workload. Like a file share, a backup might make a ton of sense if you've got a massive data lake, you know, and it's petabytes large. Is backing up the whole data lake the thing you want to do, or do you actually just need a copy of the raw data before it's been transformed in some way? Or do you need like point in time recovery for transformed data sets? Like, you know, you have to kind of pick and choose and understand your workloads to get to where you need to be.
Yeah, I was just gonna look. Do you even know how much soft delete, what the pricing is for it?
I have no idea.
I don't see it either. I was just looking to see if I had it sent into Azure CLI. This is all how to turn it on. That retention period, 7 days up to a long time. Um, Data replicated, data redundancy. Yeah, I don't even see pricing for soft delete. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. We'll find a link and put it in the show notes. Or put a
Yeah,
note in the show notes.
it could very well just be built
I
into
think it might just be built
the
into the
cost of the
pricing.
underlying storage, right? Like by having things like soft delete enabled, like you've usually got some kind of like versioning or snapshotting enabled, if not explicitly, then certainly in the background. So now it's just active data for you, right? And I think for files, yeah, let me pull up the FAQ really quick. Soft delete, blah, blah, blah.
Both standard and premium file shares are billed on the used capacity when soft deleted rather than provisioned capacity.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Effectively just active capacity.
Yep, for more information, file shares. Yeah. I think has this been generally available for a while, and there was just a bunch of news that came out about it recently, or was the
Uh,
backup and restore was soft delete GA'd for a little while, and it was the backup and restore that just became available.
Soft delete GA back in October 2020. It was the end of the month, so effectively November.
November, got it.
Uh,
So
so
that
so
was
so so it's been
a
a
couple
couple
months ago.
months. Yeah. Yeah, I think you'll also start to see like things like this pop up that like maybe came out a few months ago that aren't fresh in anybody's mind. Ignite is coming up in March, so you're gonna see a lot more announcements
Right,
and posts and things
like
like that.
3 days. Guess what? With this shotgun mic, you now absolutely know that my kids do stay in the house with us.
I can tell that you have kids. Yes.
That I have kids that like they all invaded the upstairs and started screaming. And it was the backup and restore is still in public preview. So Azure Files backup restore was the one that was just announced, and that one's still in the public preview.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of cool things coming in backup. So like integrations with the new backup center across all the various services that sit out there. Like I think that's one of those just like nice management plane kind of things that's going to exist once it's all rolled out and ready to go.
Yeah. But with that, we should probably wrap up. I should probably go figure out this weird Azure subscription issue that I'm having with my CSP and get some work done.
Yeah. Sounds
Gotta
like
go
a
work
plan.
on some Exchange migrations and some Power Apps and a little bit of everything today.
Well, you have fun with that.
Maybe I should build a Power App to do an Exchange migration.
It
No, that sounds like
sounds
a
like
bad idea.
it's an expensive proposition on all sides: time, money, effort. Yeah, just mental capacity. there's, there, there's a lot
Yeah,
there.
I'll pass on that one. All right, well, go enjoy your weekend, Scott. Enjoy. It's warmer out. Enjoy the warm weather, although it's rainy, and enjoy your 3-day weekend. And we will
Uh-huh.
talk to you next week.
Thanks, Ben.